Hello and thank you for joining me today. I'm Jan Clothier from Thinking Stamping and I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator based in New Zealand. And today I'm going to be sharing with you how I made this card made using the Waves of Inspiration bundle from the 2022 to 2023 annual catalogue. Now the little trick that we're going to be doing today that you may or may not have used before is mirror stamping or reverse stamping, because you can see here that in the stamp set the bird sitting on the pear faces to the left, and yet in our finished card we've got one facing to the left and two facing to the right. So if you've not done that before, I will be going through how you do that. But before that, we'll start off by what you need to gather together to make this card. So the Waves of Inspiration stamp set, which bundles with the waves dies. I've got a card base here cut from Pacific Point. It's the standard width of a piece of A4 paper, which is 21 centimetres, scored at 10.5. And I've cut it slightly narrower than I normally would. I've cut it 14 centimetres tall. And the reason that I've done that is because I'm using the stitched rectangle dies to cut out my piece of basic white. Oops, triangle tragedy. And so I've already cut out two of those, one for the front, and I'm going to use one for the inside later on. I've also cut a piece of the Waves of the Ocean DSP that I'm going to use as a mat to put underneath that. Now, this paper was part of the pre-release. This Waves of Inspiration bundle was a pre-release to the main catalogue, and during the pre-release period, this Waves of the Ocean paper was available. Now, it's gorgeous. It's just beautiful sea patterned, swirly, oceany, papery colours. Beautiful colours, and I have used that paper because I figured that quite a lot of you would have bought that paper and had it. Now, since it's no longer available, if you don't have it, then just substitute. Use some other blue paper that you've got. And I've also cut two strips. One is 2 centimetres and one is 1.5 centimetres wide, and it is the width of the stitched rectangle that we're going to use. Now, I've also already cut on, you'll need a little scrap of white, basic white, because I've used the Happy Birthday out of the set, and I have used the sweet little die here from the Waves dies to cut it out, and I've already done that in advance. Now, the other thing you're going to need is you're going to need a couple of scraps of white paper, because we are going to stamp and cut these extra birds, the ones that are facing the wrong direction, or the wrong direction from the original stamp. Okay, so we'll start off by doing those. Now, if you have a Stamparatus, that makes life so much easier if you want to do some mirror stamping. So you need a Stamparatus, and I've already popped the stamp up there. And you need just a plain old silicone mat. This is your secret weapon when it comes to mirror stamping. Okay, so I'm just going to pop that there. I'm going to get my Memento black ink, and I'm just going to ink up the stamp. And I'm just going to stamp straight onto the silicone mat. Now, I'm going to do that a couple of times. And the only reason I'm doing it a couple of times is I want to make sure that I've got a really nice solid layer of ink onto the mat. Okay, and then I'm just going to pop my piece of paper over the top. I'm going to come back in and press again. Okay, so on this side of the paper, I've got the stamp exactly as she's meant to be, bird facing to the left. But if I turn it over, it's picked up the ink off the mat, and now my bird is facing to the right. Okay, so I'm going to just turn that over so I don't get any ink where I don't want it, and we'll do that again. So, simple technique: ink up your stamp, stamp onto the silicone mat. Now, you could do this without a Stamparatus, but you'd only get one shot at inking it up because you couldn't guarantee you're going to get the stamp back in the same place. So a couple of times just to make sure you've got a nice layer of ink. Pop your piece of paper on. The reason you come back and stamp, of course, is so that you get a nice even pressure over the ink that's on the silicone mat. And now on that side, you've got the bird facing as it's meant to be. And on the back, the bird is facing in the other direction. So, nice and simple. Okay, so we'll just pop Stamparatus off to the side. Now, on our card front, I do have one bird that's just facing in the normal direction. So, I'm just going to, I suppose I could have just popped this piece of paper in the Stamparatus and done that, but I haven't done that. I'm just going to ink him up and I'm just going to stamp him there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Lovely. Okay, so obviously I've coloured in these birds. Now, what did I use to colour them in with? Well, two things. First of all, I have some of these lovely neutral toned Stampin' Blends, which came out just before the new catalogue did. Okay, so as I said, I use these lovely neutral Stampin' Blends to colour in the posts that the bird is sitting on. These Stampin' Blends don't have Stampin' Up names, they just have numbers. They go from 100 to 1,000. Going up in 100 increments. The lower the number, the darker they are. So the 100 is the darkest colour and the 1000 is the lightest colour. So I just went for middle of the range. They come in pairs, so if you're interested in buying any, you don't have to buy the whole 10. You can just buy the ones that are you think will be the most useful to you. And of course, if you don't have them, then you could colour them in with something else. Now, for the actual birds, now, you know, I don't think these are New Zealand birds. I don't know. I'm not good at aquatic birds. But what I did use to colour them in was I used the watercolour pencil assortment number 2, because some of the colours that were in the paper were colours that there were watercolour pencils for. So Granny Apple Green and Coastal Cabana became the colours that these birds were going to be. So I simply shaded them in. I just sort of went all over lightly with Coastal Cabana. And I just built up the colour until I was happy with it. Then I added in some Granny Apple Green down the breast of it. And then I could have blended it out with a blender pen, but instead I've blended it out using Wink of Stella, which does two things. Firstly, it does blend the colours together so that you get rid of that harsh line. And then I pulled that colour up the neck of the bird, so I got a very faint coloration in the head of the bird. But when it dries, you're going to get a lovely bit of glitter as well. So that's another nice little tip to remember, that when you are using watercolour pencils, if you use Wink of Stella straight on top of it, it acts almost like water would and turns the watercolour pencil into more of a paint. Okay, so just bring it up, bit of glitter. And we'll do the same thing over here. Some Coastal Cabana. Now, if you don't have the Waves of the Ocean paper because you didn't buy it when it was on pre-order, and of course now you can't buy it, and you've used something else, then you might want to think about colouring in your birds to match the colour of whatever paper you have used. So if you've used something like I don't know, Starry Sky DSP stack, then you might want to colour in your birds using Stampin' Blend markers instead. So, you know, match your birds to whatever paper you're using and you'll get a more cohesive looking result. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to pop off and I'm going to die cut these. Now, die cutting them is pretty easy because even though they are on the reverse, of course, you've got the right way round on the back, so you can use the back where they are matching the die and to line up and die cut. Okay, so I'll be back in a moment with my two birds cut out as I would like them to be. Okay, so there are my birds, and you can see I've used the other side to line them up. But once they're cut out, of course, they are good on the mirror side. And if you've got a little rough edge or whatever from where you die cut on the reverse, then just use your bone folder to smooth off that edge. Okay, so now we've got the birds that we require, and we are pretty much up to assembling. Like, the birds are the hard bit. Okay, so I'm going to choose which side of that I'm going to attach. Just, you know, a little thread of glue. You never need as much glue as you think you're going to. So pop that on. Use your wiggle room to just make sure you've got it straight. Okay, now I'm not going to attach that straight on there because you'll see that I've used some twine. So I don't want to attach the white piece until I have attached everything else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play around here for a moment and work out where I want my birds and where I want my little strips of paper. Okay, so he's going to have to come down a little bit. Okay. So what I'm going to do now that I've worked it out is I'm going to just give myself a little pencil line just so I know where I am attaching the birds. Okay, so just a tiny little dibble of glue. And using my pencil line, I can see where I want to put them. And same thing here, a little bit of glue, just to say you never need as much as you think you will. Okay, we'll pop that one in there. Okay, now where am I going to pop the paper? Well, I'm going to we have one there and one just a little bit higher. Okay, so same thing. Now that I know where I want the paper, I'm just going to put myself a little pencil line there just so I know exactly where I wanted to attach it. So here comes my bottom piece. And I'm going to use the grid paper there to help me line up where straight is. Now, which side of that do I want? That side or that side? I think I'll go for the more strongly coloured side. Okay. Okay. Okay, so I've got that. Now I am going to get my Stampin' Seal's gone for a holiday, so we'll just use a little bit of this old snail because the only reason I want to use it at all is to just give myself something tacky for my string to attach to. So I've got here my Baker's Twine Essentials pack, which is lovely because it's black, grey granite, white vanilla, and I think that's crumb cake. So I only need the white one. And I'm going to use my little bit of tack in a minute, but first of all I just want to work out roughly how much I want, and I want to go around 3 times, so I want about that much. And I want to thread it through my through and under my happy birthday. So let's see, 1, and then I want to go back the other way. Perhaps I'll just go through twice. Yeah, I'm just going to go through twice. Okay, and I am going to pop that onto dimensionals as well, and that's going to have the added effect of helping to just put the, just hold the twine in place. The dimensionals will help hold the twine. So we'll just pop them on there. Now, you could go through a third time if you wanted to, but in the interests of speed, I've only gone through twice. Okay, so that's going to go there. And I'm just going to bring that around and just press it into the Stampin', well, we'll pretend it was Stampin' Seal, we'll pretend I knew where it was. I did actually use Old Snail, but only because my Stampin' Seal seems to have gone missing. Okay, so we've got that. Now I cut plenty because I was originally going to go around 3 times, so we'll just trim that off. And then when I glue it, I'm going to make sure that I put glue here where the ends are, because I don't want any unfortunate accidents later on where the string comes unstuck. So we'll just give it a bit of glue, and now we'll pop that on there, nice and centered. Okay, that's looking good. Now we're almost done, so I just need to cut myself about a generous 20 centimetres, shall we say, so that I can just tie myself a bow at this end of the happy birthday. Oops, fumble fingered today. Give that a nice little tweak. And then you can trim the ends to as much as you like. You know, if you like a generous swoosh, leave it long. If you like it shorter, trim it shorter. Okay, and the only other thing that I did to finish this off was I added in some of these Rhinestone Waves basic jewels, which came in all of these beautiful colours like Bermuda Bay and Coastal Cabana and Granny Apple Green and Pacific Point. They were also part of the pre-order special. So if you didn't buy them then, you won't have them. However, if you did buy them then, well, you will have them. Now, if you didn't, there is absolutely no reason why you couldn't just use basic rhinestone jewels for this. There's no reason in particular why they have to be blue, apart from the fact that they just look nice blue. So I'm going to use some Granny Apple Green ones and some Pacific Point ones. Whoops, that's not quite where I wanted it to be. You pop up there, and perhaps we'll have another Pacific Point one just down there. Okay. Okay, so we'll just clean off some of this mess, put it off to the side. Now, what you do on the inside is entirely up to you. I'm not going to do one now, I'll simply show you what I did on this one. So I just stamped the bird on there and coloured it using exactly the same techniques that I did on the front. So Stampin' Blends on the poles and watercolour pencils and Wink of Stella on the actual birds. And then I had on my desk just a tiny little scrap of this paper, and I just used that as a kind of an ocean. But obviously you can do whatever you want to on the inside of your card. It's a great place to do some experimenting. Okay, so that's it. That's my reverse image or mirror image stamped card using the Waves of Inspiration bundle. If you have questions, you're welcome to contact me through my blog or my Facebook page, the details of which are going to pop up on the end card of this video and appear in the video description below. If you live in New Zealand and you'd like to purchase any of the things that you've seen today, or indeed anything from Stampin' Up, you're more than welcome to shop at my online store, and there's a link to that in the video description of this video underneath this video, and on my blog as well. Thank you very much for joining me, and if you enjoyed what you've seen and you'd like to see what I do next, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you very much.